Hey! It's time for a new character chart series. Now, it feels like it's been forever since my last character chart series, but it actually just ended in May, so it wasn't really that long ago. But for the handful of you that are new to my channel, or just haven't watched my Unordinary, Lore Olympus, or Hardcore Leveling Warrior character chart series, in this series I will take a look at a webtoon and specifically analyze 9 different characters, their personalities, their morals, their actions, and more. Then put them into the character alignment chart from D&D. Each spot represents their stance on authorities, established rules and such, and their morals. Each category has 2 parts. The top part, lawful, neutral, chaotic, are their stance on rules and laws, whether they follow it blindly or actively break them. The second part is their morals, good, neutral, evil. This is how they behave, whether they're super sweet or kind or just terrible people. Now, it's important to know that the morality section of the character chart is dependent on the webtoon, since often their world is different from our own. We can't judge them based on our worldview, based on what we deem right and wrong. However, there's something that makes this webtoon different from all the other ones I've done a character chart series on. It's that this webtoon is the most grounded in reality, and most importantly, Let's Play doesn't have villains. Which means the evil section isn't going to be occupied by your typical villains. It's going to hold people that might be just a little more rude than most, a little more arrogant than most, a little more malicious or hostile than most. So please understand, when I say someone in this webtoon is evil, it doesn't make them evil. Because Let's Play has some of the most likable characters. So let's start out with a fan favorites. And one of my own personal favorites. Let's talk about the Welsh boy Charles Jones. While not introduced until episode 6, he is a rather important character in the story. And his first introduction isn't great. Charles is a leader, which means he might not be everyone's cup of tea. His strength and confidence is a great sign of a leader, and his seemingly cool and collected self, like in moments here, where he's assigning roles or dealing with coworkers. However, his strength and confidence seemingly transfers to most aspects of his life, including how he deals with others. For our clearest example, we see his treatment of our main character, Sam Young. While I'll go into depth with her character later, you should know that Sam, while incredibly intelligent and talented, lacks the self-confidence to stand up for herself. And we see Charles kind of abuse this aspect of her. We see right when he's introduced. When Sam is asking about her role in the next job, we see Charles be Charles. No need to say more, Miss Young. You have the most attention to detail out of anyone on my team, and you're the only one I can count on for such an important role. That's why you've handled the data entry thus far. Let us discuss this further at the meeting. Until then, could you do something for me? Lucy will be late this morning, and someone needs to make the coffee. I'm hopeless with anything in the kitchen, and you are the only other person who can make a decent cup of coffee. Could you take care of that? Now, before that coffee comments, it was seemingly a decent conversation. He compliments Sam, noticing her attention to detail, and how she's the only one to seemingly do this important role, right? Well, we hear from one of Sam's coworkers, and seemingly her friend, that data entry is a work for an intern, not someone who's a full-time employee. Sam's already done her time as an intern, but she's still being assigned grunt work. Charles's confidence makes him great at bluffing, or in other words, lying. But in Charles's words, a well-intentioned untruth. And Charles is skilled at those well-intentioned untruths. That beginning quote was one of those untruths. He's not lying about her attention to detail, but we see one of the main reasons why he assigns grunt work to someone whose skills are past it. We hear from the conversation earlier with the coworker and Charles, Umed accuses Charles of showing favoritism for a business reason. And I can't help but think that you're showing favoritism in hopes of getting a software contract from his family's company. Which is the bigger part of who Charles is. Someone who's not afraid to make enemies, or make people upset for the things that he believes are for the greater good. His well-intentioned untruths. The lies that he tells because he thinks that they can help. And while some of you might think that Charles is way too good and handsome to be lying, you would be wrong. About the lying bit, not about the handsome bit. This isn't the only time Charles drops his well-intentioned untruths, and his sometimes cold and harsh actions. See, during a lunch with Charles and Sam, she asks why from day one he's been hard on her, to which we have an interesting answer. Before we met, I was informed you would be your father's successor to the company. You would one day become my boss, my employer. And do you know what I saw when I finally did meet you a year ago? Weakness. You didn't possess a shadow of your father's professional presence, nor did you show a hint of integrity. What am I saying? I was resentful of you. Why should I trust the future of my career to this girl? To put it bluntly, Miss Young, you didn't have what it takes to run a company. However, I soon learned that you are one of the brightest, most intelligent people I've met. Therefore, it came to my attention that you had potential, but you lacked confidence. Charles isn't afraid of being the villain to further a cause that he deems necessary or worthwhile. We see him explain this in the same conversation. I gave you one tedious task after the next. I even asked you to handle jobs outside of your responsibilities, like making coffee. And for over a year, you fulfilled each request without a single complaint. Charles is a leader, which means his presence can be a little overwhelming, and he's well equipped to use that to his advantage. We hear from Jay, Sam's brother, he's a master manipulator, and he uses people. It's what makes him good at his job. And he's not wrong. I've already discussed the well-intentioned untruths and his beginning treatment of Sam, and while I don't really want to touch too much on Season 2, since it's not finished and characters might change, I did want to touch on one of those moments. For example, his business meeting with Sam, where he utilizes Sam's kind and generous character to his advantage, gaining the trust of someone who he's trying to get into business with. And I have yet to mention his relationship with his boss, Mr. Young, Sam's father. While often a terrifying presence, is often the softest man ever. And we constantly see our Welsh boy Charles clash with the big boss, and often challenging him to change to be a better father, businessman, or husband. But that's business Charles. The confidence, the leadership, the calm under pressure. Compared to the other webtoons that I have had the pleasure to cover, most don't split the character up. Most don't have a person separated between two identities. However, this is something that this webtoon is constantly doing. It shows every part of every character, and it often shows it using hearts. Pixel hearts. Pixel hearts appear often, are meant to show what the character is feeling in that moment. Some may be depleted, some may be refilling, some may be guarded. However, Charles's pixel hearts are the most interesting. His hearts are frozen with a broken ring around them. In my John video, I questioned a lot of John's actions, and often people explain that society made him who he was. And yes, of course, other people's actions influence who we become, and Charles is no different. While we get some hints that his past may have been a little tragic, we do get confirmation that at one point Charles was married, and that marriage didn't end well, as his ex cheated on him with his best friend, leaving Charles emotionally wrecked. Notice how he looked in his flashbacks. He looked happier, more innocent, more naive. But after that moment, Charles appears refined, more mature, and it's easy to see why. That event hardened Charles. It refined him. It made him cold-hearted. Get it? Cold-hearted. And anyways, notice something else. That his hearts are filled. Often others' hearts are depleted. But his hearts are not only frozen, but they're completely full. Now, we don't get the exact meaning of what the hearts mean, but it's a mix of both emotional and physical health. Charles, while having a difficult past, is both emotionally and physically better. But after he got better, he decided to freeze his heart. He decided to become an island, depend on no one for anything. His confidence and his strength come from his pain that he's felt before. His heart is frozen. He doesn't want to feel things anymore. He doesn't want to get attached to anyone. He doesn't want to get tied to others. And we get this in his playthrough of Ruminites. Compared to how Martial Law plays, Charles plays smart. Getting the quill compared to the small knife, noticing the blood on the basket, casting spells to shrink the dragon dog, even reviving the lost princess. However, when given the option to marry said princess, he chooses not to. I must decline, your majesty, for I am bound to walk this world alone. However, this heartbreak ends in the princess killing herself, so that the ghost can follow Charles around. Charles admits that if he had known she was going to kill herself, he wouldn't have finished the game. Because I know marriage doesn't equal a happy ending. There's a lot of speculation on what this means. Whether it shows that Charles is gonna hurt Sam, or isn't gonna hurt Sam. My thoughts is that he will, but not intentionally. If there's one thing that I wanted to establish about Charles is that a lot of his actions are rude, arrogant, cold-hearted, and often hostile. However, for the most part, he does seem to do it with an objective in mind. Whether it's a business proposal, personal improvement, or weird private moments with others that I don't want to bring into this. Charles isn't afraid of being the villain if it means things are done correctly. But that's just it. If things are done the way he deems is correct. Charles believes that his way is the correct way. And while sometimes they might be, other times they don't necessarily make for the best option. Often being hostile to others for reasons that might be wrong. Which comes back to our lovely character chart, in the issue that was presented at the beginning of this video. Morals are dependent on the webtoons, but more importantly, the characters that are being discussed. And I need to restate that there are no villains in Let's Play, and no real evil characters in the series. So when I put Charles into chaotic evil, please understand, Charles is constantly arguing with authority. And while at times he respects people like Mr. Young, his boss, he's constantly throwing curveballs and untruths. His belief that his actions are the best way might seem noble, but often can be hostile and rude. Now you have to understand that I love Charles' character, and don't consider it to be evil. But when comparing it to the other characters around him and in this story, I believe out of the 9 characters that I plan on discussing, it makes sense that Charles goes into chaotic evil. But, of course, I'd love to hear your opinion on the matter. Are you a fan of the Welsh boy Charles? If so, why? Leave it in the comments. But, like always, thank you for watching.